I'm going to show you exactly how I built my first system at Tanglefoot Brewing on the cheap. Let's see if we can find it. All right, we found it. We're in.
What am I supposed to do?
This is it. This is the OG Tanglefoot system. So, it may not look like much, and granted it's not much, but this is what I use to brew the same quality lager that I'm still brewing now when I initially opened. So I'm gonna give you a rundown of all the equipment and how I made it happen. First, we got the hot side. I'm not gonna go too much into detail about this because if you're watching this video and you're interested in home brewing, there's a good chance that you already have a system that's able to produce wort reliably. I have a mash tun and a brew kettle. This was originally for a 15-gallon homebrew system that I bought on Craigslist, and this is a 1-barrel boil kettle. So I had to double mash into the boil kettle to collect enough wort to brew 1 barrel of beer. And on top of this is one of the most crucial aspects of brewing lagers at home or in a tiny brewery, a heat exchanger. So this is a plate heat exchanger that I would run the wort through, and a lot of times homebrewers will use a counterflow or a plate heat exchanger and they'll just run city water through it. But city water is not cold enough to chill down wort to pitching temperatures, specifically here in Texas where it's 110 degrees. So how did that make this work? That brings me to this guy. First big change in my brewing process when I switched from making ales at home to making lagers was a chest freezer that was originally used to keep my ales cold in kegs, but I ended up converting it into a cold liquor tank, and I'm gonna show you how I did it. Standard chest freezer I bought on Craigslist. All of the seams are caulked with silicone that allowed to dry, and it made it watertight so that I could fill it with water and turn it on and it would keep the water cold. And finally, the most important part of the brewery, the fermentation chamber. Again, Craigslist special. This is a used upright freezer that I housed a plastic fermentation vessel. Again, nothing fancy. All this stuff you can find online, on Craigslist, Amazon, any way you can get it. This essentially was large enough for me to fit my 1-barrel fermentation vessel in there and keep it cold throughout the fermentation process. So we've got wort production, we've got a cold liquor tank to cool the wort, and a fermentation chamber to keep the beer at a constant temperature through fermentation, which is the most crucial parts of making lager. How did I control the temperature? That brings me to the sponsor of this video. The most important part of this entire setup was the temperature controllers that I used, and I happen to use Inkbird controllers. More on Inkbird in a second, but let's talk about how the temperature controller actually works. So this is a temperature controller. The way that it works is you plug this end of the controller into your outlet at home. You plug the plug of the refrigeration unit that you want to control the temperature of into this part, and then dangle this little probe inside the vessel and maintain the temperature that you set on here, which I'll show you now. Step 1, we need to plug it in. Right out of the box, this controller comes preset in Celsius. So first thing we want to do is go in there and change that to Fahrenheit, unless you just like using Celsius. We're going to hold the set button in the middle down for about 2 seconds, and it's going to pop up a menu of different settings. We're going to click through until we get to the C or F setting, and we're going to hit down, change that to F, and click set for another 2 seconds, and it will change the values from C to F. So like I mentioned before, the way that these controllers work is you plug them into the wall, and then you plug whatever you're controlling into the cooling outlet. You then place this probe inside the area that you want to maintain the temperature of, and then we're going to change the setting on the temperature that we want it to be set at, and I'm going to show you how to do that now. So again, we're going to go to the set button and hold it down for a couple of seconds. It's then going to give us a value of the set point right here on the bottom. Let's say we want to set this at 50 degrees where I would normally lager my beer. Click that set button again. You'll see that the light for cooling comes on, and that controller is sending power to the unit that you are trying to cool. Let me show you a practical example of how this works. So right here we have a lamp. We're going to plug this into our controller and use it as an example of how this feeds power to the unit that you're going to be using. The controller is set at 78 degrees as my set point, and the current temperature in here is 77.7 degrees. That's a little warm, but we're in Texas. If I cover the probe with my hand, the temperature should rise and engage our controller and turn on the light. There's also settings on here to change your differential for both heating and cooling. You can set max temps and low temps, and it has high and low temp alarms that would go off. So if your beer is set at 50 degrees and all of a sudden it's hitting 90 degrees, you'll hear a little chirping from this little bird. This is the Inkbird ITC 308. Inkbird's got three main product categories: smart controllers, smart sensors, and food thermometers. They are a global company that can be found pretty much anywhere in the world. So check them out if you're interested in getting any of these controllers for your homebrew system, or if you're looking to start a small brewery like I did. I ended up just putting a little nail on the side so I could hang it, and I would drape the cord into the middle of the water when this was full. For the cold liquor tank specifically, I would set this to about 36 degrees, and it would maintain temperature cold enough for me to knock out wort to 50 degrees. That was ideal for pitching temp. I did the same thing with the temperature probe on the fermentation chamber. I would dangle it about halfway up the fermentation vessel just to get an average temperature that's inside of the chamber. For fermentation, I would knock out at 50 degrees, so it would be set at 50 degrees, and I would let the temperature rise halfway through fermentation to complete the fermentation. And again, I set my probe on the side of the fermentation chamber for easy access, and I could see the temperature that was maintained in the vessel. When I got an email from Inkbird asking if I wanted to do a brand sponsorship, I immediately knew what video I wanted to make. I was actually really excited because these were the controllers that I used in my first brew house when I opened Tanglefoot Brewing. And so I knew the product, and I thought it would be really cool to show you exactly how I started my brewery. I then reached out to my friends that bought this equipment from me to start their own brewing project, and they were gracious enough to let me come access the storage unit and rip out all the equipment, and I will have to put all of this back now. So Inkbird sent me two controllers to replicate how I use them in this brewery. I had two vessels that I maintain temperature, a cold liquor tank and a fermentation chamber. So I asked for two controllers, and I'm gonna give a controller away to two lucky people who comment on the video below. If you're looking to improve your fermentation control, you wanna add a cold liquor tank into your home brewery, comment Inkbird below down in the comments, and I will choose two lucky winners to send these brand new controllers to. See, it's not that complicated. You can make great lagers at home. All you need to do is have proper temperature control. You can get fancy and you can buy glycol jacketed fermentation vessels, but if you're looking to start on a budget like I was when I started Tanglefoot, then these are great options. I found both of these on Craigslist for around $100. Granted, that was a couple of years ago before everything got more expensive, but you could probably get the same exact fermentation chamber and cold liquor tank for $300. It's pretty good. And again, I'm assuming that everybody that's watching this video has homebrewed or is looking to homebrew and has the ability to produce wort. We could talk about that in another video. Now I got to put all this back. So this video was really fun to make. I was super happy that my friend Tristan and Amy allowed me to go check out my old brewing equipment that I hadn't seen in over a year in their storage unit. I'm glad that y'all finally got to see the original equipment I was working on. Again, this is not super special stuff. In fact, it's very, very basic, but it just goes to show that it's not the equipment that makes great beer, it's the process and the way that you use that equipment. Like, subscribe, do all the things you want to do. Hope you enjoyed seeing me sweat a little bit, pulling everything out of a storage unit today. Until next time, keep brewing great lagers. Cheers.